You think Christmas parties in the 1970s were all about boring cheese cubes and crackers? Think again. These were the golden years of creative home entertaining, when hostesses spent days preparing elaborate appetizer spreads that would impress neighbors and family alike. We are talking about an era when presentation mattered more than simplicity, when canned ingredients were not shameful but celebrated, and when no flavor combination was too bold to try. Today, we are diving into 25 Christmas appetizers from the 1970s that have completely vanished from modern holiday tables. These are not your basic party snacks. These are the dishes that defined an entire generation of festive gatherings. Let us start with something that will make you raise an eyebrow: pineapple and Spam party skewers. Before you judge, understand that in the 1970s, Spam was not a punchline. It was a convenient, reliable protein that smart hostesses knew how to transform into something genuinely delicious. This appetizer combined two things America could not get enough of during the tiki culture craze: tropical pineapple and savory canned meat. The magic happened when you cubed that Spam into perfect little squares and fried them in a hot skillet until every side got crispy and golden. The edges would caramelize, getting slightly sweet and deeply savory at the same time. Then you would grab those canned pineapple chunks, drain them really well, and thread them onto toothpicks with the fried Spam. But here is where it got sophisticated: the brown sugar glaze. You would melt brown sugar with a little butter, maybe add a splash of soy sauce for that sweet and salty combination that made everything taste exotic. Brush it over those skewers right before serving, and suddenly you had something that looked like you had been to Hawaii, like you understood tropical cuisine, like you were not stuck serving the same old boring appetizers as everyone else on the block. The sweet pineapple cut through the fatty, salty Spam in a way that actually worked. Kids loved them. Adults ate them by the handful. Serving them meant you were worldly and adventurous. They disappeared because Spam became something people made fun of. But back then, when prepared right, it was essentially pressed ham that could be transformed into party food that actually tasted good. Next up, shrimp Newburg pastry cups. This was serious showing off. Picture walking into a Christmas party and seeing a platter of these tiny golden puff pastry shells, each one filled with the most decadent, creamy shrimp mixture you could imagine. Shrimp Newburg was restaurant food, the kind of dish you ordered at places with white tablecloths and candles on the tables. Bringing it home as a bite-sized appetizer was a power move that told everyone you knew your way around sophisticated cooking. The filling required real technique. You'd sauté shrimp in butter with shallots until they just turned pink, being careful not to overcook them. Then, you made this incredible cream sauce with egg yolks, heavy cream, and a generous pour of brandy or sherry. The alcohol was not optional. It gave the whole thing that grown-up edge that separated serious cooks from amateurs just following recipes. You'd fold in the shrimp, add a pinch of paprika for color and cayenne for a subtle heat. The pastry cups came from the freezer section, which was perfectly acceptable because nobody was making puff pastry from scratch for a party. You baked them until they were golden and flaky, then filled them right before guests arrived so they stayed crispy. Each bite delivered this amazing contrast: crunchy, buttery pastry shell giving way to that silky, rich filling studded with sweet shrimp. They represented the elegance of the 1970s, French cooking techniques, luxury ingredients that showed you'd spent real money, and those individual portions that made every guest feel special. They faded away because they are honestly labor-intensive and expensive, and modern entertaining tends to favor simpler, cheaper options that do not require last-minute assembly work. Ham salad on cocktail rye might be the most humble entry on this list, but it appeared at literally every Christmas gathering. It was not fancy food, but it was reliable, and when served on those tiny squares of dark rye bread, it somehow felt elevated. It was working-class food dressed up just enough to feel appropriate for company. Making ham salad was often a post-holiday tradition. You would take leftover Christmas ham and either grind it or chop it very fine, until it was almost a paste. Mix it with mayonnaise, sweet pickle relish, a big spoonful of yellow mustard, and a heavy shake of paprika. Some families added chopped celery for crunch or a dash of Worcestershire sauce for extra depth. The texture needed to be spreadable but not soupy, thick enough to stay on the bread without sliding off. Spread it generously on cocktail rye bread, those little 2-inch squares that came in bags at the grocery store. Top each one with a thin pickle slice or another sprinkle of paprika for color. Arrange them in neat circles on a platter with some curly parsley tucked around the edges. That was it. Simple and straightforward, but guests would eat them by the handful throughout the party. This appetizer represented practical elegance. Nothing went to waste, especially not expensive holiday ham. You could make dozens of these for almost no money and still feel like you were hosting properly. The dark rye added a level of sophistication that plain white bread could never achieve. They disappeared because we stopped making things that required actual assembly work, stopped buying leftover ham just to grind it up, and stopped believing that simple ingredients could be elegant enough for entertaining. Cold-cut pinwheel spirals were pure visual magic. Before wraps became mainstream in the 1990s, these colorful spirals were the height of creative appetizer presentation. Slice them open and you got a perfect swirl of colors. Pink ham, white cream cheese, and maybe some green from chopped olives or pickle relish. They were the kind of thing that made guests stop and say, "Wow," before they even tasted one. The method required patience more than skill. You would take large flour tortillas, which were just becoming common in regular grocery stores and still felt somewhat exotic to many home cooks. Spread them with softened cream cheese mixed with a little mayonnaise to make it more spreadable. Layer on thin, sliced deli meats, usually a combination of ham and turkey for color contrast. Some recipes called for a layer of American cheese. Then, place a whole sweet pickle spear along one edge of the tortilla and roll everything up as tightly as possible, really pulling it snug so there are no air pockets. Wrap the whole thing in plastic wrap and refrigerate for at least a few hours, preferably overnight. The chilling was absolutely crucial because it let everything meld together and firm up. When you were ready to serve, unwrap the log and slice it into half-inch thick rounds. Each piece revealed that beautiful spiral pattern that made them look way fancier than the 10 minutes of actual work they required. Arrange them standing up on a platter so everyone can admire the design. These were brilliant problem solvers. How do you make cheap deli meat look expensive and special? Shape and presentation. The tortilla format was still novel enough in most of America to seem interesting and slightly exotic. They disappeared because wraps eventually became so common that they lost their special status. But in the 1970s, when Mexican food was still considered adventurous in most suburban kitchens, these tortilla-based appetizers felt genuinely cutting edge. The holiday cheese log rolled in nuts was every hostess's pride and joy. This was not just a cheese ball shaped differently. It was a statement piece that announced you had put real thought into your appetizer presentation. The log shape meant you could slice it cleanly like fancy French paint, and that coating of crushed pecans and fresh parsley signaled sophistication you could see and taste. You would start with the base, cream cheese beaten until fluffy, which was basically the foundation of every 1970s appetizer. Mix in sharp cheddar for actual flavor, a good splash of Worcestershire sauce for depth, and maybe some garlic powder or onion powder. Some recipes got creative with additions like crumbled crispy bacon or dried beef bits for extra punch. The mixture needed to be firm enough to hold its shape, but still soft enough to spread on crackers later. After mixing, refrigerate it until it was workable, but not rock hard. Then came the shaping. Using cold hands or working quickly, form the cheese mixture into a log about 8 inches long and 2 inches thick. This required patience and sometimes multiple attempts to get it smooth. Once shaped, roll it in finely crushed pecans that have been mixed with freshly chopped parsley. The nuts create a crunchy textured coating that contrasts beautifully with the smooth, creamy cheese inside. Some ambitious hostesses would create alternating stripes of pecans and paprika down the length of the log, making it look even more impressive. Present it on a nice wooden board with a small cheese knife positioned nearby, and fancy crackers arranged around it. The log shape let guests slice off clean medallions instead of scooping from a ball, which somehow made it feel more refined and restaurant-like. This cheese log represented everything about aspirational entertaining in the 1970s. It took time and care to make, but the ingredients were affordable enough for anyone. You were not just serving cheese and crackers like some amateur. You were presenting a carefully crafted cheese log with a pecan coating. That distinction mattered enormously at parties in the 1970s. Crab dip in a sourdough bread bowl was pure theater. Before bread bowls became associated with chain restaurants and lost their special appeal, they were the absolute pinnacle of impressive home entertaining. The concept of taking a perfectly good round loaf of sourdough, hollowing it out, and filling it with hot bubbling crab dip was the kind of thing that made guests actually gasp when you carried it to the table. The dip itself was rich but straightforward to make. You'd mix softened cream cheese with mayonnaise, real crab meat, and this is important. It had to be real crab because using imitation marked you as cheap, lemon juice for brightness, Worcestershire sauce for depth, and Old Bay seasoning because that's what you used with crab. Some recipes added shredded sharp cheddar for extra richness and to help it stay creamy under heat. The key was getting the consistency right, thick enough to scoop cleanly but loose enough to stay creamy and not turn into a solid mass. You'd cut the top off a round sourdough loaf like you were making a lid, then carefully hollow out the inside, leaving about an inch of bread as structural walls. All that bread you removed got cubed up into perfect dipping pieces. Fill the hollowed-out bread bowl with your crab mixture, top it with more shredded cheese and a good shake of paprika for color, then bake the whole thing until everything bubbled and the cheese on top turned golden brown. When you brought it to the table, still hot and bubbling, surrounded by all those bread cubes and maybe some crackers, it was pure entertainment. The bread bowl served as both container and food. As guests dipped throughout the evening, they could actually tear pieces from the bowl itself to scoop up that rich crab filling. By the end of the party, the entire thing would be consumed. Nothing wasted, everything delicious. It disappeared from modern tables because bread bowls eventually became too associated with corporate chain restaurants, losing that homemade special occasion feeling they once had. Vintage spinach dip in pumpernickel was the appetizer that defined the 1970s potlucks and parties. Everyone, and I mean everyone, brought spinach dip to gatherings. But the presentation in a hollowed-out pumpernickel loaf instead of just a boring bowl made all the difference in the world. The dark, almost black bread contrasted beautifully with that pale green dip, creating visual drama that elevated something simple into something special. And as people dipped, they could eat the vessel itself, which felt clever and waste-free. The recipe felt absolutely sacred and never varied. Start with 1 package of frozen chopped spinach. Thaw it completely and then squeeze it dry, removing every possible drop of moisture. Add 1 packet of Knorr vegetable soup mix with its dried vegetables and seasonings that will hydrate in the dip. Add 1 cup of mayonnaise and 1 cup of sour cream. Mix everything together and refrigerate overnight. That overnight rest was crucial. It lets the dried vegetables soften, and it allows all the flavors to marry into something cohesive. Right before serving, hollow out a round pumpernickel loaf. Keep the bread you remove and tear it into chunks for dipping. The dark bread has a slightly sour, earthy flavor that actually complements the spinach dip better than plain bread ever could. Pour the cold dip into the bread bowl, surround it with those dark bread chunks, and add some crackers and raw vegetables for variety. The combination of creamy, herby dip and dense, flavorful pumpernickel is genuinely delicious. This appetizer represents the perfect balance of convenience and presentation. The dip itself takes maybe 5 minutes to mix together. No cooking required, but serving it in that pumpernickel bowl makes it look like you put real thought and effort into your contribution to the party. Classic Chex Party Mix deserves its own moment, because this was not just an appetizer, it was a cultural phenomenon. The original recipe, not the dozens of variations that came later, combined Chex cereals with peanuts and pretzels, all coated in seasoned butter and baked low and slow until everything turned crispy and addictively savory. This was the snack that appeared in big bowls at every Christmas party. The people ate mindlessly by the handful while talking, that somehow tasted better at parties than it ever did at home. The recipe came right from the Chex cereal box, but smart hostesses knew the secret was in the seasoning and the patience. You would melt an entire stick of butter in a large roasting pan, then stir in Worcestershire sauce, garlic powder, onion powder, and celery salt. Add corn Chex, rice Chex, wheat Chex, pretzels, and peanuts, stirring until everything got coated in that seasoned butter. Then, into a low oven, 250 degrees, for over an hour, stirring every 15 minutes to ensure even toasting. The house would smell incredible, that combination of toasting cereal and savory seasonings filling every room. What made the original version special was its restraint. It was not loaded with a million add-ins like modern versions. It was just those core ingredients, perfectly seasoned and expertly toasted until every piece had that irresistible crunch. The mix of textures, crunchy cereal, salty pretzels, toasted peanuts kept your hand reaching back into the bowl. This was democratic snacking at its finest. Cheap ingredients, simple method, and a universally loved result. Cherry Cheese Ball Snowman was where whimsy met appetizer presentation. While most people were making standard cheese balls shaped like spheres or logs, creative hostesses took it a step further by stacking 3 cheese balls of decreasing size to create an actual snowman figure. This was not just food anymore. This was an edible sculpture that made kids and adults alike smile before anyone even tasted it. You would make 3 separate cheese balls in different sizes. The base used the standard cream cheese and cheddar mixture, but each ball needed slightly different proportions to get the sizing right. Stack them carefully on your serving platter, using toothpicks if needed for stability. Then came the decoration, and this is where hostesses got creative. 2 raisins or black olives became eyes. A small piece of carrot made the nose. Pretzel sticks formed stick arms poking out from the middle ball. Some really ambitious versions used a tiny hat made from a cupcake liner, or added a scarf made from a strip of fruit roll-up. The cheese mixture itself was usually kept simple. Cream cheese, sharp cheddar, a little Worcestershire, maybe some dried beef or bacon bits mixed in, because the presentation was doing all the heavy lifting here. Surround your snowman with crackers and watch as guests tried to figure out the most polite way to dismantle and eat him. This represented everything about entertaining in the 1970s. Food should be fun, creative, and memorable. Yes, it took extra time to create 3 separate balls and decorate them, but the response from guests made it worthwhile. These have largely disappeared because modern entertaining tends to favor simpler, less fussy presentations. But they captured a moment when people believed party food should entertain the eyes as much as the taste buds. Smoked oyster canopes were the sophisticated appetizer that separated confident hosts from timid ones. Oysters, even smoked ones from a can, felt exotic and slightly intimidating to many Americans in the 1970s. Serving them meant you were not afraid of strong flavors, that you appreciated the finer things, that your palate had evolved beyond basic American tastes. These tiny bites appeared at upscale cocktail parties, arranged on silver trays with careful precision. The base was usually a simple cracker, something sturdy enough to hold toppings without breaking. Spread each cracker with softened cream cheese that had been whipped with a little lemon juice to brighten it. Then came the star, 1 smoked oyster from the can, placed carefully on each cracker. A tiny sprinkle of paprika added color and a whisper of heat. Some versions added a small sprig of fresh dill or a thin slice of green onion for sophistication. The flavor was intense. That smoky, briny oyster against the mild, rich cream cheese and the crunch of the cracker created a complex bite that tasted expensive, even though canned Bowen smoked oysters were actually quite affordable. These canapes represented aspiration. Serving oysters, even canned ones, suggested you had traveled, dined at nice restaurants, and developed sophisticated tastes. They required guests to be adventurous eaters, which was part of their appeal. You could immediately identify who in the room was culinarily brave and who stuck to safe choices. They have disappeared partly because fresh oysters became more accessible, making the canned version seem like a lesser choice, and partly because modern tastes have moved toward less assertively flavored appetizers. The olive and pickle relish wreath turned the humble pickle tray into holiday artwork. This wasn't just a bowl of pickles and olives tossed together. This was careful arrangement, thoughtful color coordination, and genuine creativity applied to the simplest ingredients. Green olives, black olives, pickles, pepperoncini, and sometimes pickled onions or cocktail onions were arranged in a circular wreath pattern on a large round platter. The outer ring might be overlapping dill pickle slices, the next ring green olives, then black olives, with pepperoncini arranged like holly berries. Cocktail picks inserted throughout made it easy for guests to spear their choices. Some hostesses added a cherry tomato flower or a bunch of fresh herbs in the center to complete the wreath look. The care taken was remarkable. Each element was positioned deliberately to create that perfect circular pattern. Colors balanced, shapes varying to add visual interest. This wasn't thrown together. This was composed, and everyone could see the effort involved. Beyond the presentation, these relish wreaths served an important culinary function. They provided the necessary acid and salt to balance all the rich, creamy, cheesy appetizers that dominated the 1970s spreads. After eating several bacon-wrapped bites and cheese-based dishes, guests needed that sharp bite of pickled vegetables to refresh their palates. The vinegar and salt cut through the richness, cleansing your mouth and making you ready for more. Modern crudet platters with ranch dip are distant descendants, but they lack the personality and careful arrangement of a proper pickle and olive wreath. We've forgotten that sometimes the simplest offerings, when presented with care and thought, become the most necessary elements of a successful party. Pineapple cream cheese canoes took the stuffed celery concept and gave it a tropical twist. Standard stuffed celery usually involved cream cheese mixed with something savory like blue cheese or chopped olives. But these canoes went sweet, combining cream cheese with crushed pineapple and topping everything with chopped walnuts for crunch. The result was an unexpectedly delicious sweet and savory combination that confused your taste buds in the best possible way. You would wash and trim celery stalks, cutting them into 3 or 4 inch pieces that resembled little boats or canoes. The cream cheese filling started with softened cream cheese beaten until fluffy, then you would fold in crushed pineapple that had been very thoroughly drained. Any excess moisture would make the filling too loose. Some recipes added a touch of honey or powdered sugar to emphasize the sweetness. Pipe or spoon this mixture into the hollow of each celery piece, mounding it up generously. Top with finely chopped walnuts for textural contrast and visual appeal. The celery provided a crisp, slightly bitter crunch. The filling was cool, sweet, and creamy. The walnuts added earthy richness. Every bite delivered multiple flavors and textures that somehow worked together despite seeming like an odd combination on paper. These represented 1970s creativity and willingness to experiment with unexpected flavor pairings. Sweet and savory was not revolutionary, but putting pineapple and cream cheese and celery felt inventive. They disappeared because we have become more rigid about flavor combinations, less willing to embrace the playful experimentation that defined that era's cooking. Mini cocktail sausage Wellington bites took the classic beef Wellington concept and miniaturized it into party-appropriate portions. This was ambitious cooking made accessible, French technique applied to humble cocktail sausages. Each little sausage was wrapped in a small piece of puff pastry, brushed with a mustard glaze, and baked until golden and flaky. The result looked impressive enough for fancy parties, but used ingredients and methods that any home cook could manage. You would start with those little cocktail sausages, the kind that came in jars or cans. Pat them completely dry because any moisture will make the pastry soggy. Roll out sheets of puff pastry and cut them into rectangles just large enough to wrap around each sausage. Some recipes called for spreading a thin layer of Dijon mustard on the pastry before wrapping, which added a sophisticated bite. The contrast between the flaky, buttery pastry and the salty, meaty sausage was irresistible. The mustard glaze added a grown-up sharpness that elevated everything beyond basic pigs in a blanket. These bites were fancy enough for sophisticated gatherings, but familiar enough that even kids would eat them. They represented that 1970s desire to bring restaurant-quality dishes into home kitchens, to prove that with the right techniques and a little effort, anyone could serve impressive food. Sardine and lemon butter toasts were the most polarizing item on any appetizer spread. Sardines divided people into camps. Some loved their intense, fishy, salty flavor. Others could not get past the idea of eating tiny whole fish from a can. For sardine lovers, these toasts were heaven. For everyone else, they were avoided entirely. But at parties in the 1970s, sardines appeared regularly because they represented European sophistication and were not afraid of strong flavors. The base started with good quality butter, softened and whipped with fresh lemon zest and lemon juice until it became a bright, tangy spread. You would lightly toast baguette rounds, spread them generously with this lemon butter while they were still warm, then top each one with a sardine from the can. A small sprig of fresh dill and maybe a thin slice of cucumber added color and freshness. The lemon butter cut through the intensity of the sardine, its brightness balancing the fish's richness. The toast provided crunch and a neutral base. It was a simple assembly, but the flavors were bold and unapologetically assertive. Serving sardines meant you had confidence in your own taste and did not need everyone to like everything you served. These toasts represented a time when strong flavors were not considered offensive, when hosts took risks and guests were expected to be adventurous. They have disappeared because modern entertaining tends toward options that please the crowd and offend no one, and sardines definitely offend some people. Retro hot crab rangoons brought Chinese-American takeout flavors into home entertaining. While crab rangoons had been served in restaurants for years, making them at home for parties was a 1970s innovation that showed how international flavors were infiltrating American cooking. These golden, crispy triangles filled with cream cheese and crab were labor-intensive but genuinely delicious, and they always disappeared fast from any appetizer spread they graced. The filling combined softened cream cheese with real crab meat, a little green onion, finely minced, garlic powder, and a splash of Worcestershire sauce. Some recipes added a tiny bit of sugar to balance the savory elements. The mixture needed to be thick enough to hold together during frying. Wonton wrappers, increasingly available in grocery stores as American interest in Asian cuisine grew, were filled with a spoonful of the mixture, then folded into triangles, with the edges carefully sealed using water. Frying was crucial. Hot oil, around 350 degrees Fahrenheit, turned them golden and crispy in just a couple of minutes per batch. They emerged puffy and crackling, the cream cheese inside melted and molten. Served immediately with sweet and sour sauce for dipping, these were irresistible. They required real effort, standing over hot oil and frying batch after batch, which is partly why they have faded. Modern entertaining favors things you can prepare ahead or heat in the oven, not last-minute deep-frying projects. Ambrosia salad cups. Dessert pretending to be an appetizer, and nobody complained. These mini cups of Cool Whip marshmallows, canned mandarin oranges, pineapple, and coconut were pure 70s sweetness. Just drain your fruit really well, fold everything together with some maraschino cherries, and chill for a few hours. The creamy, chewy, fruity texture was weirdly addictive. Some recipes added sour cream for tang or pecans for crunch. Nobody cared that it was basically dessert before dinner. 7-layer party squares. The famous 7-layer dip portioned into individual cups. Stack refried beans, sour cream, guacamole, cheese, tomatoes, olives, and green onions in muffin tins. Each cup gave you all 7 layers in perfect proportion with every bite. The rainbow of colors, brown, white, green, orange, red, and black, looked seriously impressive on a platter, and guests could grab one cup and eat it with chips without the mess of a communal bowl. Assembly line prep made these easy to produce in quantity. Pineapple cottage cheese mold rings. Savory gelatin at its finest, or weirdest. Mix cottage cheese, crushed pineapple, and lemon jello. Pour the mixture into a ring mold and chill until completely set. Unmolding required a trick. Dip the mold briefly in warm water. Slice and serve cold on lettuce leaves. The tangy, sweet, slightly weird combination was considered sophisticated and refreshing. Modern tastes have completely rejected savory jello, but in the 70s, this was elegant party food for ladies' luncheons and cocktail parties. White cheddar and paprika deviled potatoes. Think deviled eggs, but richer and more filling. Boil baby potatoes until tender. Scoop out the centers carefully, then fill them with a mixture of the mashed potato, sharp cheddar, sour cream, and butter. Pipe the filling in for a fancy presentation. Top each one with a generous dusting of paprika and, if you like, chopped chives. Serve them cold or warm them briefly before the party. The crispy skin against the creamy, cheesy filling is satisfying and substantial. These take a simple idea and turn it into impressive party food that actually fills people up. Pure whimsy and slightly ridiculous. Fold bologna triangles and stack them on toothpicks with cheese cubes to look like Christmas trees. Some people added cherry tomato stars on top. Were they elegant? Not even close. Were they fun? Absolutely. Kids especially loved them because they looked like toys and tasted familiar. These captured the playful side of entertaining in the 70s, when food could be silly without being gourmet, when hosts weren't afraid to be creative and have fun. Shrimp wreath ring. A classic shrimp cocktail presented with serious holiday flair. Arrange cooked, chilled shrimp in a perfect circular wreath pattern on a large, round platter, with cocktail sauce in the center. Each shrimp overlaps the next, all facing the same direction, working in concentric circles. The visual impact is immediate and festive, turning simple shrimp cocktail into something that looks professionally catered. Presentation is everything. This is all about making guests feel special. Hot Swiss and onion party dip. Comfort food in a ceramic dish, pure indulgence. Caramelize onions slowly in butter until golden brown and intensely sweet. This takes patience, and it creates incredible depth of flavor. Mix with sour cream, mayonnaise, and plenty of shredded Swiss cheese. Add a little Gruyere for sophistication. Bake until bubbly and golden on top. Serve with sturdy crackers or bread rounds. People hovered near this bubbling, indulgent dip, scooping bites while it was still hot enough to burn. No pretense of being healthy, just absolutely delicious. Retro stuffed cherry peppers. Pickled cherry peppers, stuffed with either tuna salad or herbed cream cheese. These intense flavor bombs cleared your palate after eating too many creamy, rich appetizers. Buy them pickled in jars, drain them well, and remove seeds if you want less heat. The sharp, vinegary pepper against a rich, creamy filling created a serious, intense contrast that woke up your taste buds. Not for everyone, definitely divisive, but fans ate several in a row despite the heat and the way they made your eyes water slightly. Green Goddess Veggie Boats. Cucumber quarters, hollowed out and filled with an herbaceous green goddess dressing made from mayonnaise, sour cream, anchovies, and fresh herbs. Its pale green color and intense herb flavor were sophisticated and refreshing. Light and genuinely delicious, they balanced heavier appetizers. Holiday Pineapple Ham Tarts. Mini tart shells are filled with chopped ham, pineapple jam, and melted cheddar. Sweet pineapple against salty ham was proven territory, but miniaturizing it into individual tarts made them party appropriate. It was unexpected and a real conversation starter. That's our journey through 25 forgotten Christmas appetizers from the 1970s. These weren't just recipes. They were reflections of an era when entertaining meant real effort, when presentation mattered as much as taste, when hostesses spent days preparing and competed to serve the most creative and impressive spreads. Some of these honestly deserve to come back. Others are probably best left in the past where they belong. But all of them tell the story of a decade when American home cooking was bold, creative, and completely unafraid to try new and sometimes weird things. Which would you want on a modern Christmas table? Let me know.